Hello everyone and welcome to the Train Sim World March 2024 roadmap. I'm Alex, our community manager here, and I'm joined by the wonderful Mr. Matt Pedalston.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, we're here to talk about basically the month of Train Sim World. So for those of you who are new here and joining us for the first time, I'm going to explain a little bit about how this roadmap stream is going to work over the course of the next hour or so. And for those of you that that are existing in our community and have joined us regularly each month, you've already heard enough waffle from both me and Matt, so you understand how this works. But basically, we're going to talk about what's happened over the last month, and then we're going to talk about kind of what's happening in the future. And this can be anything from our recent and upcoming releases to our patches to stuff that's kind of currently going through development, different features and tools for Train Sim World, and then a little bit from the community and a bit of a spotlight. So while we're starting up, please do tell us if the audio is audible. As always, we want to make sure that you can hear us clearly and everything sounds as good as it can. But yeah, that's it. Matt, you ready for tonight?
Oh, I'm ready. I'm ready. ECM2 has just said you need another set of kitty ears. Shall I just flag up the new acquisition here? I got new sets of kitty ears. This same earphones that I've been using at home, but these are the new version 2. Yes, version 2 earpieces. So there you go. Right. Anyway, back to less interesting things.
Yeah, Matt, you're hiding away in your new Batman-esque cave. This is
I'm
definitely
in the
Matt's.
back cave, yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit of a quick summary over what's happened over the last month since our last update. And I'm going to start it off with the fact that 1 month ago, about February 11th or so, we had our Dovetail Direct. And we've talked a lot about this, but basically we shared a ton of information about the future of Train Sim World, as well as our other franchises as well. But focusing just on Train Sim World, we shared loads of different things about Rosenheim, London Overground. We shared information on Fife Circle, Semmeringbahn, San Bernardino line, and even projects really far out such as the Tadami line by Union Workshop. Now, all I'll say is that was a ton of information last month. We're back to kind of the regular cadence of information. But that being said, I hope this month has kind of opened up a bit more of developer insight, and we'll talk about that more in a minute. So other things that happened throughout the month between February and March today, we had the release of Bahnstrecke Rosenheim to Salzburg, which was last Tuesday, and we hope you've been enjoying it. We've seen some really great feedback, and we do appreciate all the issues that you've submitted for us to look over on the forums as well. We actually have a patch going live tomorrow to resolve one of the I keep remembering the station name. I think it's the Teisendorf station announcement where you can hear the audio in the cab really far away. We've got a fix for that one coming out tomorrow as well. So again, I'll talk about patches a little bit more. But yes, Rosenheim released and that went really well. We do actually have something unique that happened this month, and I'm here with the absolute wonderful figure that is Matt himself, and he raised a incredible 5,118 plus pounds. I believe that figure is now close to 5,200. And of course, that was through all of the support from the people watching tonight and for the people that supported Matt during the Game Blast weekend streams that he did. It's just such an incredible figure to raise for such an amazing cause. If you're not aware of Special Effect, they basically support people that have physical disabilities or other disabilities that prevent them from kind of having the typical life enjoyment that most of us are able to kind of live freely with. So they support them by giving them different ways of accessing games, and it's just fantastic. There's such a massive amount of money to make such a big deal to the people that really need it most. Matt, anything you just want to quickly word on your Game Blast marathon? I think you streamed about 29 hours.
Yeah, it's about 29 hours in total. All I want to say is a huge thank you to everyone that came along and supported, and whether it was donating or whether it was just showing up and joining in the chat and joining in the fun. It was really good. I think I had a great time. I hope everybody else had a great time. And as you can see, the end result is lots of other people are going to be able to play games as well and enjoy that. So everyone wins. Thank you very, very much for your support.
Yeah, and this isn't the first time we've done this kind of event with Special Effects, and we'll be back in the future for more. So we're glad and we're very appreciative for all the support from the community. And the last thing to really mention that's happened, again, we're still talking about the last month, is a week ago or so, February 26th, we had a small patch that included a set of achievements that are now unlocking on PlayStation and Xbox. We had a couple fixes for some Formation Designer UI issues, and we also fixed the GWHST kind of displaying the wrong power car in Livery Designer. So that's the last month, but we're really here to talk about the future. We want to know about the cool new stuff. So let me throw up our March roadmap graphic, which is right here. And as you can see, we've added a new spring core update to the 0 to 3 months. So this is basically our way of saying, you know, we wanted to shift more into monthly larger updates, and we think monthly is a good cadence for us to release big updates. And the reason why we haven't just labeled it the March update is because if we need to spend more time, we would like to spend that time to make sure it's right. So we're aiming at a spring core update coming out in the next few weeks, and you'll hear more news on the announcements panel for that. As well as this, we've removed Rosenheim from the list because that has released. And you may have noticed, if you look really closely, we've added a UK route to the 4 to 6 months section. So look out for another UK route coming fairly soon. And finally, one last change from our last graphic back in February is that the Peak Forest, the BR Class 104 and Peak Forest expansion pack is now kind of moved to the release date to be confirmed. So I'll talk more about that as we go through this chronologically. And that's kind of going to start us off. We're going to be talking now about all the new content that's really going to start the conversation off strong. But before we begin, I do want to mention that as kind of stated a little bit before, the roadmap is meant to be a bit of a mix of, hey, we want to show you really cool stuff and we want to show you awesome screenshots and talk about the content that's coming out, but we also want to show you the development insights. It's meant to be a good balance, and we've seen in previous roadmaps that maybe we've leaned too much on like more of a, here's some new cool stuff, go check it out on store pages, but where's all the dev insight? And we hope that you've noticed the difference this time around. We've added a bit of a preview for suspension improvements, and if you haven't seen that video, check out the description on this, if you're on YouTube, sorry, on this live stream, and you can find a link to that on our channel. Otherwise, you'll find it in the March roadmap article itself. But yeah, you can see the Class 66 suspension in progress. As well as this, we've also got a little bit of a sneak peek for the Taurus, the 1116 loco on Semmeringbahn. And we've had a bit of a dev insight from the wonderful Matt as well. So again, we hope you enjoy seeing more behind the scenes work. Let us know how you feel about it if you feel like sharing a few opinions. But do keep in mind that when we share development things like this, it's very work in progress. So things may not be right, things may not be fully finalized. So just keep that in mind. Because some of the things we're showing don't even have publicly confirmed release dates either. So there we go. Right, that's it. That's a lot of initial waffle. But let's start off. Let's start off with talking quickly about Rosenheim. So Rosenheim, Bahnstrecke Rosenheim-Salzburg did release last week. This is our mountainous cross-border hilly action where you're going from Germany and crossing over the border into Salzburg in Austria. You get to drive the BR111, but also included with it is the 4024 Talent, as well as the BR185.2. So that's out now. You can check it out on the store pages. It's out on all of our usual platforms. And make sure to look it up because we've had some really fantastic feedback on that. But in terms of stuff that's coming up, we want to talk more about the London Overground Suffragette line, which has now officially been confirmed to be coming on March 19th. So playing in the background here, and I'm going to keep an eye on the audio so it doesn't drown me out, is our first look video, which is now publicly available on our YouTube channel for you to watch. But don't worry, it's playing in the background. You might not be able to hear much of the audio because I've toned it down a little bit. So yeah, this is publicly confirmed to be coming in just a couple weeks now. This includes the Class 710. It runs from Gospel Oak to Barking Riverside. We've confirmed the pricing to be about £5 or so less than our usual offering. So it's about 24.99 Great British pounds and then 29.99 euros and dollars. We have a coming soon article that has a ton of details about the different layerings and the different features on the route, as well as the first look video you're watching now. So there is a link to that article in the description. But Matt, to stop me talking, what are your thoughts on the London Overground Suffragette line coming soon?
I was running this last night, as it turns out, testing something that the beta testers were talking about. So I did a full line run from end to end. It's so much fun. The adventure is just great. It's so responsive and fast. Accelerates very quickly, brakes very quickly. So it's super easy to drive. Really good fun. Very modern displays and cab. And the route. It doesn't take a huge amount of time to. I'm just going to lean a bit closer because I'm getting a people comment, am I using the right microphone? And the answer is unfortunately yes. I don't normally do this stuff from home, so and this laptop's got some issues, so you'll have to bear with me, I'm afraid, unfortunately. But yeah, so running the route from I went from Barking Riverside to Gospel Oak. One of the things that was really interesting actually is I used to live in Leytonstone, and this route goes via Leytonstone High Road. So there's two tower blocks that you see. I think they're the St John's Towers or something, and they're modelled perfectly in the right place, exactly how I remember it. So it was quite interesting, sort of having a bit of a trip back down memory lane on the Gospel Oak line. So yeah, it was a really enjoyable run from end to end. I haven't fully explored it by any stretch of the imagination, but just that one run was just like, yeah, we're coming back.
Yeah, and as you can see from our first look video as well, you'll be able to kind of find a bit more information about the routes in general, and you can dive into our coming soon article again. That's linked in the description if you really want to know more about it. But yeah, that will be coming out in just a couple weeks, so you can expect us to share a little bit more information and news about that, and be talking about it when we come closer to launch. I see JD's been lurking around in the chat. Don't worry, JD is fine, by the way. Everyone asks, where's JD gone? Is he okay? JD's fine. These are the roadmap streams tend to be something that me and Matt look after now, but perhaps JD will be back in the future for another stream. But for anyone asking, he's lovely. He's doing fine. So aside from London Overground, we also want to talk a bit about the Five Circle line. So this is Five Circle line, Edinburgh to Markinch via Dunfermline and Kirkcaldy. Bit of a tongue twister for me there, but that's coming soon. We don't have a publicly confirmed release date, but we do have some screenshots to show that we shared in the roadmap article as well. And yeah, this is,
look at that 170, beautiful.
yeah, as you can see here, we got the ScotRail Class 170. This is a Rivet Games release. And for a bit more information, it's a 52-mile length route with about 20 stations. I say about, I do mean 20 stations. There's no about to it. One doesn't disappear and reappear. But if you look at the Rivet Games YouTube channel, you can find a ScotRail Class 170 walk-around video, as well as a dev blog, a bit about behind the scenes of them developing this route as well. And I believe they're actually going to make a couple more dev blogs to release on their YouTube channel over the coming weeks until we're closer to the release. So you can check that out again. As always, the 170 walk around, which you can watch, we don't have it on our streaming setup tonight, but it is in the description of this video, again if you're watching on YouTube, so you can check that out. And as well, you can see here we got the iconic Forth Bridge, which recently celebrated its 134th birthday, which was just yesterday. So that's something that James Lewis mentioned to me while we were in a call earlier. So yeah, Matt, have you got anything you wanted to add with Five Circle line?
I mean, it's got the iconic Forth Rail Bridge, which is going to be tremendous to see. But I'm looking forward to that 170. It's a really common, popular train around the country. Obviously, this is the ScotRail version of it, but it kind of opens the doors to seeing more 170s, hopefully. So that's not a hint or a release. It's just obvious, really. But yeah, love it. It's really good to see that 170. Five Circle was really fun, really good fun in Trains in Classic. So it's going to be good to see it see how Rivet have materialized that into Trains in World.
Perfect. And keeping onwards with more news for our releases, Semmeringbahn is something that we talked a little bit about in the Dovetail Direct. We had a few screenshots, and well, we shared a few screenshots with the roadmap earlier today. And then suddenly someone added this video of a walk around for the 1116 out of nowhere. I mean, I don't know who, I don't know which person here is in charge of making sure the roadmap article goes out okay.
I wonder.
I wonder. But let's switch over to that. So we've got a few images here, and again, this is Semmeringbahn Wiener Neustadt to Murchterslag. And again, please don't butcher me too much on pronunciation. But this is our full Austrian route. It's got wonderful mountain scenery. It's 68 kilometers with 17 stations. And as you can see here, as I switch to it, we have a walk around for the UBB 1116 Taurus locomotive. So while we're showing this, again, the audio will be a bit lower than usual. You can find this in our March roadmap article on our website, and again linked in the description. But Matt, is there anything you really want to add while we take a little peek through the cab?
Well, I mean, the key thing with this and was when we were doing the 1116 was, if we're doing the 1116, we really need the newer cab. So as you can see here, once it turns around again, you're in a brief glimpse there. So the Taurus, the 182 you've been used to, has got the green cab. It's got the old steam gauges on it. Whereas now you've got the modern displays. You've got the newer blue cab. So and the sounds have been given a pass over as well. So it's really interesting. It's a much more up to date setup of the Taurus. So quite different to what you've been seeing before.
Yeah, and with Semmeringbahn, again, we don't have much more information regarding the release, but just know its development is definitely ongoing, as you can see from this video, that we want to kind of open the doors to a bit more of a preview of that, and we'll be sharing more about Semmeringbahn in the coming weeks as well. So we've still got a little bit left on this preview, so I'll let it play out. Don't know if we did have a little mention of the screens turning on with a little image of the Taurus, but I think we've
yeah, when it booted up, you can see the boot screen that comes up when it first powers up. You can, yeah.
Yeah, and someone's pointed out this is on Training Center because it's just meant to be a bit of a walk around for the cab. And as I mentioned, of course, the work is the route itself is very work in progress, so we'll share more when we're closer to the time. Right, now moving on, we're moving to a bit of a mention on our US route, which is the San Bernardino line. But unfortunately, we don't really have too much to share yet. I do still have from our Dovetail Direct some of the images that we showcased. So for reference, the San Bernardino line is San Bernardino, Los Angeles to San Bernardino. And as you can see from the route map there, those are the stations and kind of the trajectory it will be following. Do we have any images? This was the route map. These were the images. If I hide this, there we go. We got a bit of a work in progress for the MP36PH locomotive. So these aren't anything new. We haven't really got much of an update. And that kind of calls back to when I talked about at the start that the Dovetail Direct, the actual event itself, was a really deep insight into some projects that are much further down the line. And at the moment, we don't have much more to share with San Bernardino other than development is continuing, and we'll let you know when we're a bit ready, a bit closer to being ready to share more information on it. But for those of you that hadn't seen this before, these are some work in progress screenshots of the MP36PH loco, and I'll pop this back up again. Here is the route map as well. It's worth mentioning now, while we're talking about San Bernardino, while we're talking primarily to players who are enjoying the US experience, we do still have our US route that is in our to be released section, and this is the one that we're still not quite ready to talk more about. Now this is partly because of trying to work with our licensors on getting the route prepared and ready, and we're really waiting to really be able to talk more about this. So again, we shared a bit more of an update last month. Not too much has changed in this regard, and really we're getting ready to share more with you, but you have to stay patient with us just on that one as well. And finally, in terms of the last bit of new content and upcoming bits, I want to talk about the BR Class 104 and Peak Forest expansion pack. So this has been, as mentioned near the start, this has now been moved to the release date to be confirmed. And really the reason for why that is, and we reached out to the developers, Simtrack Studios, is simply that it's progressing very well. It's just taking a bit longer than expected. So they want the release to go as smoothly as possible. They want to give it enough time, and so they're basically using the extra time that they'll have from kind of pushing the release date back from where it was expected to be, and kind of get it into as best a polished state as possible. So it's worth mentioning as well. So as we work with third parties and as we build the roadmap to be kind of a development insight, that timelines can easily change. You'll see this from when we have our announcements about when we want to talk about certain things going to beta or certain updates needing an extra week to come out, have everything ready. Timelines are going to shift a little bit, and that means, that can change depending on the tools we're working with, the teams we're working with, again, as I mentioned, third parties and different teams that we want to bring into the Train Sim World ecosystem. It can be confusing on, where's the update. I understand a lot of people are invested in the story that we tell when we talk about new announcements. And so the best thing we can really do is try and keep you in a loop. But we want to share the understanding that a lot of the time timelines can shift around, and we'll do our best to make sure that you're all informed of when that happens. So we'll share more regarding the Peak Forest, the BR Class 104 and Peak Forest expansion pack from Simtrack Studios when we're ready. And that's it for the content section. We're kind of moving on to the next stage here. We're just talking a bit about patches. So over the last month or so, and coming back from kind of December time, we've now finished releasing our winter core updates, which you can read up on in our announcements threads and our game update threads as well. But I mentioned at the start we have a spring core update coming soon. So we don't have the full details list. I don't have a finished prepped list that I can just share to you all right now. But what I can say is that the intention with this spring core update is to investigate how we can improve substitution. We're trying to fix some key community issues that you've been raising. And also some of this is scoring adjustments to various routes. I think we mentioned on the roadmap, this includes Maintalbahn, includes Blackpool branches, includes Vorarlberg. There's quite a long list there of different routes, and we'll share the full list and details when we're ready to kind of release the patch. But yeah, so the scoring adjustments and stuff like, is platinum medal achievable? And I know that someone in our Q&A thread was asking for Blackpool branches, that there was some issue there. So yeah, that's kind of where our spring core update is targeting. And additionally, on top of this, as I mentioned at the start of the stream, the HUD settings not saving between sessions on consoles. We know that's been a pain. We know that players on console have been really complaining about that, because every time you boot the game, the HUD settings are, they just get reset to default. So that is hopefully, and I say this now because it's just come in just this evening, 10 a.m. tomorrow, that's the intention where we're starting to roll out that patch, and that will be bundled in with the fix for the Teisendorf station on Bahnstrecke Rosenheim, where you can hear the announcements from the station somewhere on the track where you're not supposed to hear them, much further out than intended. So those two changes, we've got a fix for that, and that's starting to go live from 10 a.m. tomorrow, but expect it at some point tomorrow and later in the week. But yes, we'll be sharing more news on that, but we also have the larger spring core update as well. So that's the little section on patches and bits. Now let's talk about cool stuff. I want to talk about the editor, and I want to again, I want to give you a chance to really open the floor here as well. So the editor it's an ongoing project. We're still working on it where we can. Now I know some of you have pointed out that our PC editor fixes have stopped being listed from our roadmap graphic, and I'm pretty sure actually that we ended up missing it off the last graphic for last month, and then it didn't get added onto this one. But what I can say is that they should be in there. Our intention that we shared about the PC editor is that to set expectations right, we want you to understand that improvements might take a few months. So realistically, editor improvements should probably sit in a 4 to 6 months category, and we'll update you if that changes. But we've talked a little bit about the improvements we want to get into, such as not cooking content. But actually, we've been seeing some fantastic work from the PC editor, and I've got a couple projects that I'll share in a moment or two for the editor. But Matt, I did want to give you the floor as well to talk a bit about how the process of the editor has kind of come about since we launched, and kind of a bit more on insight from yourself on the release of the editor and kind of what you've been seeing from the community since then.
I mean, the editor's been it's had its moments, it's got its strong points and its weak points, and there's some things that as you know, we've been looking at the community feedback on the editor. We've got third parties using the editor and actually creating some pretty incredible stuff with it. So I think these things are doable, but they're needlessly difficult at the moment. You have to work around some things you just shouldn't have to work around. And obviously there are some problems where it's not loading assets properly, or it's not letting you cook and things like that. So those are sort of like some of the things that are on the hit list for what we're looking for. But yeah, as you say, those are going to be in some of the longer term. But once the goal is, once we can start things moving properly and releasing some of those changes, we can try and get some more stuff going as well, and actually try and then do more and be over and beyond that, sort of try and be a lot more hands-on. And I think that's what also then kind of opens the gates to allow us to start doing more of the video content and tutorial content to sort of really to help answer a lot of those questions. So keep the questions and the challenge and the discussions going on in the forum, because while there's nothing being updated at the moment, there is still stuff happening, and we are still paying attention to what's going on, and it's helping sort of shape our plans for in that 4 to 6 months category.
Yeah, and to talk kind of again while we're on the topic of progress for various improvements as well, part of this category, which is in the roadmap article that some of you may have read, or hopefully most of you as well, is Formation Designer as well, and that's another feature of Train Sim World that we've recently kind of kickstarted on Steam and Epic Games platforms, and we're really we're really developing and pushing to try and make the best feature as possible. The update that we put in the roadmap article was that we are kind of reviewing the steps needed to come out of beta. Now, I know a lot of you, especially on console, are really looking forward to when you can get your hands on Formation Designer, because you really want to try out the new tool and try out the new feature. And this makes sense, but right now we don't have any confirmed timelines for when console will kind of get a chance to play with the new tool. But like I said, we've seen some really positive reactions to Formation Designer so far, and thank you for everyone that shared their thoughts and their feelings with experiencing Formation Designer a bit early, jumping into it on the beta kind of capacity, what they found have been really well and what they've struggled with. It's really useful for our teams in terms of how we develop it and kind of what we look to prioritize when we're addressing different features for Formation Designer. But at the moment, we are looking at the steps needed to kind of move away from the beta tag and have Formation Designer ready for everyone to really get to use as a proper, fully launched tool for Train Sim World. Now, Matt, I don't know if there's any quick mention on Formation Designer you wanted to add, but...
No, I mean, we're looking at again, the sort of rounding up the feedback. We've had some more work been going on it. I've actually asked the production team, and I'm going to as well, just do a review of where we're at in the development builds. I've got some other members of the team looking at some of the other setup and so forth, just so we can get our final, right, what do we need to get from here to version 1, which is when it will again go for everybody, and then start thinking about, well, what does it look like beyond there as well, because this is the Formation Designer is another one of those features that will just, there's a lot of opportunity to expand and improve and take on feedback from yourselves and so forth. So there's a lot of things that we want to do. There's a lot of things you're asking us for as well that may not make it into version 1, but we kind of want to get version 1 wrapped up and out so everyone can use it. We could continue tweaking till Kingdom Come, but let's just find a place to get it to a stable, everyone can have it now, and then we can work out what the next update or that'll be. So it's coming on nicely, really the gist of this update was just to say to everybody, our goal at this point is to get it out of beta so that it can go out to all the platforms, and then work out what we do after that as well. So it's not the end of dev for Formation Designer necessarily. It's the we want to get it out so everyone can enjoy it.
Yeah, and I think this is also a really good point to talk about timelines for different features and really what that means. And I was thinking about this a little bit before, but when we talk about editor fixes, we've tried to kind of set the expectation that these improvements may take a couple months to come out. And again, we'll have to keep you updated on that. But there is a very different feeling when it comes to talking about improvements coming soon. It's difficult for us to want to commit to certain dates because obviously we don't want to set expectations in mind when actually we need more time to make sure that it releases in the way that we're happy with. So like we say with Formation Designer, we're currently reviewing the steps. Hopefully that's a very soon change that we'll have more news to share when we can. But obviously this applies to PC editor improvements as well as suspension improvements as well. All of these tools, they're kind of in different stages of development. They've got different teams looking at them as well. And the kind of deadlines for what they need to be kind of considered improved or considered onto that next stage. It's very dependent, it's very various. And I know a lot of the community get a little bit confused about, well, how does each one kind of stack up against another? But we're hoping that we're sharing as much as we can with you when we can. Again, Formation Designer, expect some news on that soon. We're currently reviewing the steps to come out of beta, so it's looking positive. And PC editor improvements, they're a few months away yet. But in terms of the kind of meantime, as I mentioned in our last roadmap, we're looking on how we can actually help the community as best we can. There are some really amazing community guides out there. In the roadmap article, I helped share some of Train Sim Play, some of Martin's community documentation spreadsheets that he shared. Fantastic resources, and really, it's amazing to see the community kind of assist as much as they can to help each other. We'll do our part to share what we can. It is difficult for us to use the tool at times as well, to get our developers in and use the areas which might not be quite as functional as we would want either. It's certainly held back making certain masterclass videos. So we're going to do our best to make some more smaller, shorter, but slower guides as well. And hopefully I'll be able to make a video or two with Lucas and really re-go over the process of laying track and how you can kind of get started. The problem is I've taken a look through the editor list of what people want guides for, and it's a long list of maybe 30 items. Can I promise that we'll get to all of them? Probably not. It's a long list, but we'll make our way through it and we'll just go from there. But we're going to start off with, the fundamentals, laying some track. We're going to hopefully go quite a lot slower because I know a lot of your feedback from the community has said that the masterclass streams that we did, they were quite fast paced. They were a bit more easy to follow for someone that knows exactly where they're clicking and going, but you probably want something that explains the easier details a bit clearer. So that's the intention there. We'll share more when we have more, but I will say that finding the time to actually make these is important, but it's definitely something that we have to book in, and that's why it's not just an instant, oh, we'll just make a guide tomorrow. So that's it with the PC editor. And the last bit to talk about with improvements is some Train Sim Mod 3 improvements. So as we mentioned on the article, we actually are in a process of readying a third batch of improvements for Train Sim Mod 3 with the intention of releasing these very soon. There's a little bit more information on the roadmap, but I did want to give that a call out because there were some improvements that we had on our list to make sure that come to Train Sim Mod 3, and we want to just talk about the fact that you can expect another update for this very soon. Right, now community corner bits. This is the bit that I love with the roadmap, probably the most. So how about we start with some of the development insight. Now there's a really cool development insight bit that Matt helped write for us for the roadmap article, which talks a bit about what does it mean when we upgrade a route to TOD 4? What does that even mean? Why do they keep saying it on these streams? As well as a little bit on micro-stutters as well. Now, Matt, you've done your best explaining for the roadmap article, but I thought I'd give you the stage to kind of quickly summarize a little bit about, let's start with what does it mean to upgrade a route to TOD 4?
First off, quickly and summarize. Is this the first time that you've met me, Alex? So TOD 4, time of day system, TOD, time of day. So in Train Sim Mod 3, we used a system called TOD version 3 and that covers what the clouds look like, what the lighting looks like, how the sun is, how the moon is, and so forth. So that's the time of day system. TOD 4 came with Train Sim Mod 4. No, it came with Train Sim Mod 3. I'm getting my numbers mixed up. 3 was being used in 2 and 4 was being used in 3. Because obviously. So what TOD 4 version 4 brought was the new lighting, the new fluffy cloud skies, and so on and so forth. So when you come out of the tunnel and you get the bright flare effect and so forth, that's all part and parcel of the new lighting. So what do you do when you upgrade a route from TOD version 3 to TOD version 4? So there's a very simple quick change, and there's a mod actually in the community that does this very simple quick change, where it literally just changes the first thing you do in this process is remove the TOD 3 component and drag and drop the TOD 4 component in. Boom, there you go. It's now a TOD 4 route. It's also completely broken because what's happened now is that TOD 4 is something like 1,000 times brighter than TOD 3, because TOD 3 was sort of fictional approximation, gamey lighting. Whereas TOD 4 is done using real world values for what the brightness levels of the sun and the moon and so forth. So they're all done calculated using lumens and cadence and so forth. Candelas. So what you need to do now, having moved this route over to time of day 4 lighting, is you go to each light in the route, or each type of light, but really you want to go to each individual light, and you want to look at it and then dial its brightness up so you can see it, because you won't be able to see it anymore. It'll be, even though it's fully on, you won't see anything because it's bright. It's 1,000 times not bright enough. So you'll dial its brightness up. You look at with every light, there's a thing called a light source, which is what we use an emissive. It's called an emissive texture, and that's if you look at a light, or if you look at the front of the train, there's two components to a light. One of them is the thing that casts light on things, and the other one is the bright texture that looks like the light source. Those are two different things, and they're not actually the same thing at all. So having turned the light broadcast up, you then have to turn the light texture up. I want you have to do that across all of the lights on the route. And you want to then be looking at the light beam that comes out, because in TOD 3 there was no volumetric fog, so you couldn't actually see where it was. It just had to light the area up. But with TOD 4 and volumetric fog, you can now see the triangle, the cone of light. And sometimes you'll notice that cone is not in the same place as the light. It's too far down or something like that. So all that has to be corrected as well. You need to go through all your buildings, fix your emissive textures. Your train needs all its emissive textures fixed and all of the lighting fixed. Then you need to also do a pass over the route and actually say, is this right? Is it good enough? Because dark is now dark in this lighting system. And so you might want to then add more lights, change the tone and color of some of the lights. So you'll do a pass over the route doing all of that stuff. And then you've got any areas that are more complex, like Paddington Station, for example, with its covered AM main station, or if you've got tunnels or underground sections, then those are done using a technique called light baking. And light baking is where you put in lots of lights. You then do a ray tracing type approach, which works out what the thing looks like with all the lights where they are, and saves it into the textures. And then you can turn all the lights off. And there's a number of benefits for doing that. One of them is significant performance improvement because there's no calculations for lights at that point. It's all done in the textures. Everywhere you've got light bakes on a route needs to be redone. And you're looking at something north of 1 to 2 hours per light bake. And it might take 3 or 4 light bakes to get an area looking right. It's not just, press a button and it happens. You need to, again, tune the lights, do the light bakes, see what happened. You might get, if you sit on some routes where it's not quite right and you've got that blue flash as you go in, these are the things you then got to look at, work out what you got to do differently, and then redo the light bake, tidy it all up. Each of those things. So if you've got, some stations and then you've got 15 tunnels where you're, multiplying your potentially couple of hours per light bake up. So you lose an awful lot of time getting all those light bakes done. But it's all essential to get the whole thing done. So Jetwash's train saying it's something that you can do. In other words, can you update a route to TOD 4? No, because in the editor you can't write back to the route. You can't save any changes to the route. So what you could do outside the editor, I've no idea, but I'd put that as being highly unlikely. So yeah, that's basically the process. We normally allocate around about a month for a person to update a route for TOD 4 properly. Some routes are quicker. So something like Sherman Hill, when we upgraded that to TOD 4, was probably a week because there was like 1 tunnel and that's about it. And not a lot of lights because it's, the desert. Whereas some of the other routes, where they've got a bunch of tunnels and a bunch of stations and so forth, they're going to take the full month to do. I don't think we've seen any that take more than a month, but it's quite a big process, quite an involved process, and there's nothing automatic about it. You've just got to go through and run and go through the route and tune each of the lights to do what you want. You can't just hit each light, multiply by 1,000, boom, job done. It doesn't work like that.
It's a really good summary, and actually the article goes into depth about all of what Matt has said there as well. It's interesting because when we look at the recently released West Somerset remaster that Liam and I know Reese Lampard and I know a lot of other people put a love into making that route, and it's a fantastic remaster. That was another route which was updated to TOD 4. But it's interesting because, and I'm not trying to say any work is any harder or easier than others, but when you look at heritage lines, typically you might find it as a more approachable task to make for a TOD 4 route because you have typically less PIS screens, less modern trains, less modern systems, maybe less lamps, lights around. You don't have these huge big stations. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but generally you have less artificial lights. And again, if Matt's saying that every single individual light needs to be looked at, assessed if it's broken, assessed if it needs changing, when you look at possibly like a heritage line, it might be a much more accepting task than doing a huge modern route. And actually quite a lot of our routes tend to be big stations, more modern. So it's a big process. I mean, the TLDR is it's not just a button switch, right? It's like hours and like even a month of work to just make one route into TOD 4. But we appreciate that the community are asking that. We love the work that we've done, especially with the West Somerset remastered, making that TOD 4. And it can really give a route more life. But we hope that you understand a little bit more about the development process here, because if it was just a switch, we'd hit the switch. I think it makes sense that we would do that. So. I've seen a couple people saying in the chat as well, why are they not looking at the screens? Hello, I'm looking at the screen now. It's just Matt for me is there and the chat is kind of down here. So I mean, I'm
looking at you guys. Yeah? Yeah. I'm looking over here because that's where the chat is.
Yeah. So we have our setups, but here we go. I'm looking right at you now. So
we can probably do better though, Alex.
Well, I'll do my best. Right, so that was upgrading a route to Todd 4. We did talk a little bit about micro-stutters, and we'll mention it. We'll mention it briefly here again. But whenever we do a live stream, and whenever we do a preview live stream, especially, we make sure to run the route a couple times, and that caches some of the information on the route. And Matt, the dev talk is your kind of forte, so I'll leave this to you. But it's a way of helping reduce the potential for micro-stutters and hitching when you play Train Sim World.
So there's a number of causes of hitching. One of the big ones, as Alex says, when you first run a route, your display driver needs to do something called shader caching. You either know what it is or you can Google it. It's a process by which the texture is then usable in the world, and it's something the display driver needs to do. It's not actually something the game is doing specifically. The game is saying, I want to put this here, and then the display driver is then doing this job to prep it and then save it so that it doesn't have to do it again. And that process is invasive in the frame rate. Which means that the first time you run a route, you are going to get some hitching, and there's not an awful lot you can do about it. But once you've done that first run, your second run in the same area should be absolutely fine. When we've done some benchmarks, Chris in the support team actually did a couple of benchmarks where he ran a route and then reran the same route again, measuring the amount of hitches he was seeing, and it's something like an 80% drop in terms of hitches that you see on the second time round. Now, what's left at that point? So the vast majority that first time round is this shader cache, and it's worth pointing out also that if you update your display driver and in some cases change some of the settings, the display driver wipes its cache, and the next time you run anything, it'll be redoing that again. Someone said, have you looked at in menu shader caching? So the process by which it's done on DX11 and UE4 makes that not really practical from the experiments that we've been doing. We're looking at PSOs, pre-shared objects, in DX12 to see what can be done there, but we've not got any material benefits or results to sort of show from that. It is something we're looking into, but no, there's nothing that we can share at the minute. So for the time being, that's where the shader cache situation is. There are other causes of them which then persist on, and the biggest cause is so in most game engines, the world that you're in is really quite small, and what happens is that in Unreal it uses a tile streaming system to let you have these massive routes. I mean, the Unreal routes are far bigger than most, if not any, Unreal Engine game, because they're one-to-one scales, and they could be 50, 100 miles in that one-to-one scale, which is insane. Anyone would say, don't do that, scale things down and then go from map to map so that you don't have all of this stuff to manage. So the way that this is then solved by Unreal is this thing called world origin rebasing, which is essentially, if you imagine this gap here is the world that you're in and you're here, as you move along, the origin changes and the world is now here, and as you move along, the origin changes and the world is now here. So what does the origin mean? So if you imagine you've got a square and you exist in that square somewhere, and the train exists somewhere, that has a coordinate from 0, 0, 0. And that's the origin. And you can go a certain distance from that origin just fine, but you can't go 100 miles away. The number doesn't go that big. So what happens is that at a certain point, the origin has to move. So the square moves and you're now somewhere else, and then it moves and then you're somewhere else. That process of world origin rebasing is not nice. And that's why sometimes it can cause hitching, depending on how much there is to it to do at any one given moment. That's really difficult to solve. So it is kind of like something that we are in the back of our minds trying to work out if there's a better way of doing it. But I wouldn't expect to see anything reasonably. I've got to be honest. That's like seriously low level stuff that would probably damage a lot of stuff if we tried to mess with it. So, but that's kind of probably the more prevalent stutter that you'll see. You will see that there are other potential causes of them. A lot of those are things that can be optimized, and we do try and optimize things like that. So those are generally less of a cause, but really, whenever we've done benchmarks, it's shader caching, and once shader caching is out of the way, it's world origin rebasing, and then you've not got an awful lot left after that point. So that's kind of just to break down when you're seeing stutters where that is. We've spent quite a lot of time looking into it, haven't really got anything satisfying to say other than waffle on it and say, but no changes, I'm afraid. But what I would say is, as we try and do for our streams, when you get a new route for the first time, or when you've upgraded your display driver, before you sit down and actually do your play session for the evening or whatever you're going to do, just set up a quick scenario from A to B. Let it drive, go and do something else, and then come back, and you'll find that when you sit down and run the route, it's much, much nicer than that first time.
Yeah, and I mean that's exactly the process we do when we do our previews, because we want to preview the route without having as many hitches as possible. So we let it go off, and then we play our preview. So I mean, yeah, Alex looks confused. Some of that does go straight over my head, but it was a really good explanation. And I was understanding the origin moving, so I appreciate it, Matt. And I hope, obviously, I hope all of you in the community can appreciate a little bit more of dev insight about how that works, why that happens, especially if you're affected by the micro stutters and the hitching and you want to know how you can kind of best avoid it. That's kind of like our two dev topics at the moment. There was a mention that I wanted to talk about why the class 7 the class 710 layering onto Bakerloo line, and our only real comment on that is not at this stage. It wasn't something that we will have included for the release of the London Overground route, but it is something we're looking into the possibility of including. So that's not a guarantee by any means, but we're looking into it. But it isn't something that will be ready for the release of London Overground. Good to see a lot of you grateful for the explanation from Matt there, and it is really nice to get that kind of insight as well. That's why you're so valued on these streams, aside from everything else, Matt. Right, so there were a couple of PC editor projects that I did want to highlight. So in the roadmap article, I've linked to a few people that have done some fantastic work on the PC editor, and I've actually got a couple screenshots from those community projects here. So this is one from TFC, and I will have to scroll down on my own document here as well. But these are community-made projects, so these aren't anything official from us at Dovetail, but they are using the PC editor. And this is, again, this is CFTFC's work on a Toronto commuter community-made route. They're working on a brand new timetable on the Oakville subdivision with passenger services from November 2023. So, I mean, that's absolutely fantastic. We do have another screenshot here as well from, I think this is Nexus Craft HD. They're working on Eisenbahnstrecke Magdeburg Theo Blankenberg. Okay, I apologize. I've not practiced that one.
Top marks.
Marks. But it's a really awesome route, actually, that, again, Nexus Craft HD, they've actually got their own Twitch page where they live stream playing the route in development, and you can see a lot of work in progress elements across the route, but actually at the same time they've made a full length of the route. It looks fantastic, and I don't have a screenshot for it, but someone called Vindicity on our forums, they've started work on a new timetable for Munchen Augsburg. Again, apologies, I'm sorry. Munich Augsburg. Thank you, Matt. They're working on adding new services kind of between the 3 a.m. all the way to noon that utilize the Stammstrecke between Hackenberg, Burg, and Passing. That includes many different services and much more. But what I wanted to kind of bring highlight to is that, you know we have improvements that we want to implement for the PC editor, and in the meantime, we're going to be supporting it as best as we can. But there are so many amazing community projects out there that are doing their best with what they have. It is definitely a tool which is kind of more geared towards people that are very versed in Unreal, that very much know what they're doing. But even we're seeing community members that are just diving in with their, jumping in full body right into the kind of thick of it and learning as much as they can. And there are some really awesome community guides, community documentation out there that, as much as we want to help build from our side, it's much better for us to support the community growing that space as we can. So if you're interested in the editor, make sure to remember that we have a brilliant growing PC editor kind of community on our forums in the PC editor discussion tab as well. So That's the bit with the editor. A few final mentions. We're going to be diving into some questions soon. So we've got some pre-written questions from our roadmap Q&A thread that we've written down and we want to give some answers to. Don't worry, for those of you live in the chat as well, we will open the floor up to some live questions. So if you've been asking a few and they haven't had any mentions, I do want to say a massive thank you to our chat moderators who have been sharing different bits and help for questions so far. But save them for just a sec. So we'll open the floor for live questions. And just before we get to that, I want to say that a few little extra bits. Our player survey for Train Sim World was something that we released during the Dovetail Direct, and it's closed now. So if you were, if you got involved with the survey there, make sure to check your email if you haven't already, because we've sent out some add-ons for the for 20 people that entered that survey. But just to mention on in terms of when are we going to be sharing survey results and data, some of that is quite sensitive information that we probably won't be sharing publicly. But that being said, you may expect to see a few murmurings and a few different bits of details here that we will share kind of down the line. But nothing to share yet. But we did want to say thank you for everyone that submitted their feedback and their opinions for the questions through the survey. And if you're a console player, we have some console sales going on right now. You can get 70% off TSW4, the standard deluxe and special edition if you're on Xbox. So that's 70% off, and you can get up to 75% off if you're on PlayStation for various add-ons as well. So just to call out for any console players, we do have some sales going on. I know we have a lot of questions of when's the next console sale? Well, it's on right now, so don't miss out. But I'm sure there'll be more in the future as well. Let's move on to the questions bit. I know that is the thing that a lot of you wait for the most. So we're going to be starting off with a really easy one to answer. And this is, are we fixing that bug of safety systems acknowledging for not working in the Rosenheim Salzburg on the 766.2 on Xbox? I don't know if you have any insight on this, Matt, but in terms of are we fixing this bug for, especially for Rosenheim, we're looking at the first kind of patch for Rosenheim for all of the launch issues and bugs that have been raised. So thank you for sharing that feedback, but that is definitely something that we have on our list, and we have a larger list of different feedback and issues that we want to get to correcting for
I've
Rosenheim.
seen it being discussed internally, so yeah, it's being looked at.
Yep.
It's one of those things. It's like it kind of is, but if some reason it's running too slow, which means you'll normally miss the timers or something. So it's not straightforward. But yeah, it will fix it. We'll fix it.
Yeah, and just a quick mention to the Rosenheim, the Teisendorf station announcements. You can hear them when you're on the BR111 when you're way past the station. That is something that we're hopefully having fixed for all platforms kind of by the end of this week, but maybe tomorrow, because we do have a patch coming out in the early morning of tomorrow. So we'll let you know about that on our announcement forms, just in case there's any time delays to that at all. But keep an eye out on that. There was a question here of where the another German route on the roadmap graphic has gone. So I just want to give a quick call out to here again. We have some shifting timelines. Sometimes our roadmap graphic, it used to be that we would talk about the 0 to 3 months, the 4 to 6, and then the 6 months plus. We've now kind of moved that 6 months plus to just TBC. Part of that is partly because sometimes that section has bits coming into it, bits shifting out of it. When we're talking about 6 months plus, that section can quickly become a very unknown to us as well. And like I say, when we're trying to open that conversation, timelines can shift quite often, but we generally try and be as clear as possible with our dates, especially when it's getting closer to a certain release. And we'll explain all of the changes in detail. So when you look at our roadmap, there is a quick little summary underneath the TLDR section, which talks about all the things that have changed. So we'll try and be as clear as possible when changes do occur. I've got a quick mention here. So HUD settings, is there a fix for HUD settings so they don't reset every time you exit the game? Yes, there is. And hopefully that will be in tomorrow morning for you to not be plagued by any longer. Any plans for the Railjet? We know there has been a lot of mentions of this since the release of Rosenheim, and genuinely I'm going to approach this in the same way that we approach kind of when is X new thing coming. Right now, I mean, we're not going to talk about any plans if it's not on the roadmap article itself. So we've not got anything to announce in terms of that, or anything that hasn't been talked about. We've got no more plans. I think the best source of your information is when we talked on the Dovetail Director last month. We shared a longer insight into what we are ready to share. But you know, there are other plans that we haven't discussed just yet, but when it's the time to share that, we will let you know. But as for that, right now, no information. Keep an eye on the roadmap. The roadmap is your best source of information. So there are a lot of questions of when's this coming. If it's not on a roadmap, right, there it is. Let's see
Has to be
here.
in there somewhere, or the bingo cards can't be finished.
The bingo cards have to be ticked. So I'm going down my list. Matt, if you want to jump in with any live questions, feel free to. We got a mention of when is Formation Designer coming for consoles. So a little bit earlier we talked more on Formation Designer, and currently we're in the stage of reviewing what are the next steps to moving from our beta to the full feature. And so we're kind of seeing how the console situation fits around this. We'll let you know. Again, there's nothing definitive to tell you as of right now on when that is, when it's coming for console, what's the next steps of Formation Designer. But what I can say is, since the release of Formation Designer, we're now reviewing how to leave beta and what that means. What else? We've got a question here that says, will the UBB Taurus have modern displays? Well, hopefully you saw that in our walk-around preview that we showcased earlier. There's a link to that walk-around preview for the 1116 in the description as well, and that should clearly show it.
So Matthias asked a question about real sounds on the 4024. So I've mentioned this a couple times over the various streams, basically we need to get access to the real thing to do that. We are working with OBB to try and make that happen, but it's not happened yet. So as and when, that is still on the cards, we are still working with OBB to try and make that happen. As and when we can, then we'll do the updates. But we don't know when that will be at this point. So for the time being, expect not, and hopefully we'll surprise you at some point.
Where have we got to on our list? So there was a discussion in our Q&A thread on Steam improvements, and really what I want to add to this is where we've talked a little bit about kind of where we're at from our last roadmap update in terms of Steam physics and Steam improvements, and that hasn't really changed from where we are at the moment. Again, the plan is that internally we've not got any development working on that from Dovetail's side, and there isn't really any change to that. That being said, we still have third-party partners that are interested in Steam content, and we'll share more news on that when and if the time comes. And so the kind of third parties will still be working away on Steam content, but in the meantime, nothing's changed with our current stance, and we understand that for a lot of players that's quite disappointing news. But realistically, if we want to be transparent with you, that's kind of where we're at. There isn't any change to this. So we appreciate that you're voicing your concern, and it's also good to hear that concern. It's useful for us and our development teams to also understand how the community feels about certain changes and certain announcements. So again, all I can say is we appreciate the feedback, we appreciate the concerns being shared for Steam improvements. Matt,
sorry, Jetwash asked a question earlier on about objectives that are disappearing on Glossop. And the question is along the lines of, will it be looked at? And the answer is yes. I don't know at this point when it will be looked at, but it is on the list to look at. It actually affects more than just Glossop, but it's quite a big impact on Glossop. So yeah, it is on the list to look at, definitely.
Yep. Matt, have you got an update regarding the Xbox Z fighting issue? This is something that we've been aware of for a little while, but I wondered if we were able to get any more progress on that.
No, nothing further from the last time I gave an update on it, which is that there are two. I think there are going to be two possible solutions to this. One is to update every single decal. The course of this is you've got a decal, which is like the label on the 3D model, and on most platforms the decal is fine, but due to for whatever reason on an Xbox, the decal places itself just slightly further in. It's a maths anomaly on the Xbox compared to PC and PlayStation. And what that means is that you get this Z fighting of the desk and the label effectively fighting to appear, which is what causes it to flicker. What we don't know is the root cause for why it's different on the Xbox versus other platforms. So that's kind of what I'm hoping is that there's a single core fix there that will help us do that. In the meantime, I've tasked the art team with making sure that they separate the decals enough on content we're making now to make sure that doesn't happen in future content, so that then we can only focus on then fixing on historic content rather than continuing to make new content that's got that problem.
Yep. As for, I've seen this as actually one of the questions that I had planned, but seeing it in the chat again, I don't believe we've got any progress to share with the Southeastern High Speed, the AI PIS bug just yet. But it is.
No, that one is on the list to look at again. We made some progress with it's not not nowhere near the straightforward issue that so the 323 Birmingham had a similar issue, and it's definitely not the same issue, although it manifests in the same way. It's not the same issue on Southeastern. So the lead setup team lead has a handle on it, and is in the progress with the fix, but I don't have any ETA for when that will actually make it through. But it's yeah on our minds, something I desperately want to get fixed.
Yep. Someone's asked in the chat, how long is Fife Circle? It's 52 miles in length with 20 stations. From my handy notes, we love notes. So we've got something here that I want to talk about just for a minute, and it's from the player survey, and it was the mention of subscription models. Now, I want to just quickly summarize what the survey was really doing, and it was essentially just gathering all the questions from the community, all the thoughts from the community, and kind of putting them in one place to basically pitch to everyone. Kind of like a, hey, that's a good question. What does everyone think of that? And part of that was subscription models. It's definitely something that we've been aware of, and we know other products that have done similar things. But we're still reviewing the responses from the survey. I think it's a really important note to think about when we talk about anything to do with subscription models, is that currently there are no plans for any changes. We're still looking at the survey data. But as an important note, even if we were to proceed with a subscription model in the future, even if we were, you would still be able to purchase your add-ons exactly as you do now. We would never change that. And it doesn't make commercial sense for us to change that. So it's just something to mention on the potential for subscription models. But again, that isn't something that's currently in the plans, and we'll let you know if and when we do get to that kind of point in the future. And that kind of goes, to all things on the survey. We did talk a little bit about like where we're at with TSW, the future of TSW. I think there were some caveats on the survey which kind of explained that, again, these are just potential things that we're investigating. We just want to understand what the community feel about certain matters. And we've definitely seen some certain like strong reactions, both positively and both unpositively or negatively, towards different things that we shared. So again, we can't necessarily share the information of that survey because of the sensitivity of the information, but it doesn't mean that you won't see bits and stuff popping up all over the place based on what that survey showed. So just a note, there's a little bit more in the roadmap article on that as well, but for the most part, that's kind of our stance on it, and it's also a little bit of mention to anyone that was kind of worried about suddenly everything's going to be subscription model. No. What else we got? Something that I'll ask to you, Matt. We've got a plan about how do we unify key bindings. They've seen that newer DLCs have kind of a different default binding for keys than maybe compared to older add-ons. Is that something that we would look at to helping make clearer?
Yeah, I'm not sure why that's happening. Yeah, by all means, whoever that is, DM me on the forums, or anybody who's observing that issue, DM me on the forums. I mean, there may well be that they're actually subtly different functions. If they're the same, then really they should be the same. Nothing should be changing on that front. So yeah, DM me your examples on the forum so that I can go and find out what's changing there, because there should be consistency. That's just confusing otherwise.
I got a couple questions. So one of them here is saying, what is the new US routes coming out? So there is a US route called the San Bernardino line, which we've shared a little bit of information about. We've talked a bit about the route map. We've shared that the MP36PH loco will be included with the San Bernardino line. And then there's another US route that we just can't talk about just yet. Again, this is kind of partly because we're still working through the licensors on the process of how we want to announce that and how we want to work on the route. So there is 2 US routes in development currently, and we're well into development on kind of on both of them. So we're looking to share more about that when we're at a point where we're able to and when we're ready to. But for now, there isn't really any announcements. And a quick mention, that is the 4 to 6 month UK route, a DTG in-house one. It should be, because on the roadmap it doesn't list that it's under the new partners. It's just it's kind of one that's under our bucket for releases. But again, no new information on that just yet. And a quick mention here that someone's talked about scoring. So I think I talked about this earlier, but we know we've seen different scoring levels across various routes. This includes Blackpool branches, but I know there are quite a few others. where scoring is either really easy to achieve, say a platinum medal, you should expect that to be 90% of the maximum points, but in some cases it's much less, whether it takes into safety systems or other things, whether it takes that into account of the scoring calculations done at the end of the breakdown. So we recognize this. Some of these improvements are actually bundled in with our spring core update. So I've actually started looking through that list, and again, quite a lot of the improvements there are adjustments for scorings across various routes. Some of these routes being Vorarlberg, Maintalbahn, Blackpool branch, as was mentioned. And there's various others that we'll list once we have the full confirmed list of details for those improvements. And I guess a question, so this is something that someone it's called, I'm trying to read this, I think it's Viven's World. Viven's World. Anyway, they asked, how are suggestions taken from the forums? How are they collated and assessed? So I'll let you talk a little bit on this, Matt, and we don't need to go too much into detail because we've actually talked about this quite a lot in our April 2023 roadmap. What a callback. It's almost a year ago today, a year ago and a month from now. But we talk about what we call the LAMP process, LAMP, and that kind of starts the conversation a bit about how we choose routes and where do community suggestions kind of fall under the bucket of where do they get that influence from. And it's kind of the idea of comparing different concepts, seeing what the community are requesting, seeing what you'd be interested in seeing for a new release. I don't know if, Matt, if there's something there you want to add.
Yeah, so we do quite a, as again as that article talks about, we talk about the licensing, anticipation, mix, and prominence, hence LAMP, are the sort of the criteria that we evaluate. And the anticipation is really where we go to what people are saying on social media, what people send into our support tickets, what people put on the suggestions on the forums and on Discord, and all sorts of things. So and it's really used that it's not so much that we take and evaluate each of the suggestions that's made, because I'm going to be brutally honest with you, most of the suggestions that get made are impractical. But that's not to say that there isn't some real value in those suggestions and in the essence of what they're talking about. So what we'll look at is, actually, people are, there's a lot of people really would want to see a freight route in North America that's historic, because people, there seems to be trending towards that. So actually delivering something that's viable for a particular release window that hits that kind of an environment, it might not be something that's been requested, but it hits a number of things that have been requested and would therefore be of interest to that, that audience. That's where the those things are called out. I mean, Tees Valley is a really quite an old example now, but we actually came up with Tees Valley and started doing a review of what we thought people might think of Tees Valley, and then found someone made quite a detailed proposal of the Tees Valley on the suggestion forum. And that's that and the feedback that came from the other players, other forum members who looked at that is one of the reasons that we decided, Tees Valley is the right route to make. Again, we didn't make exactly the route that particular suggestion had made. We did a different part of the Tees Valley, but the point is that it's like we come up with the things that we can achieve and then marry them up against the things and the types of experiences that players have asked for, and operators they want to see, territories they want to see, and then sort of marry the two together to try and work out what's achievable and viable and sensible, but also then what's been asked for and what's interesting and so forth, and try and come up with some stuff which really ticks the boxes as well, because there's a lot of different places, not just the suggestion forums. You get a lot of stuff sent through to our support team as well. So there's quite a big picture there. There's a lot to take into account, and Steve, who does the LAMP reviews, has quite a busy time trying to assess this and pull it all together. And essentially, he writes up a report on each proposal that we do, and then we review that to decide whether we tweak the proposal or whether we throw it out and do something different, for example.
Yep. Brilliant explanation, Matt. There's nothing for me to add there. Beastie Bill, we did talk a bit about the Peak Forest, obviously the BR Class 104 and the Peak Forest expansion pack. At the moment, SimTrack are kind of taking a little bit of extra time to make sure it's in as polished state as they can. So we've kind of moved that to more of a release date to be confirmed, and that's really the only update we've got for now. But Matt, something for you is that's been raised a couple times in our thread and in the live chat is what is the technical reason for why we have multiple variants of the same loco appearing in menus? Because I think that's something that confuses some of our new players as well about why there's, you know, 3 or 4 listings for the Class 66, for example, or multiple variants for different locos.
Um, it's a really boring, tedious technical thing, but and a lot of it is down to practicality and maintainability. So let's say you make a piece of content and you make got a route when it's got a class 66 in it because you'll love a class 66 and then and that pack goes out, it's all tested in theory, and you've got that experience, that class 66, and then we come along and we make a new route and we want to put that class 66 because it's appropriate for some traffic on that route. If we tried to use the class 66 from the other route as it stands, then you'd have to own that route to be able to then use that class 66. And we kind of don't want to make you have to own another route just to get the class 66. That's not fair. Now, if we were to separate the class 66 out, from the original package, it makes the setup of the distribution infinitely more complex across the 7 different platforms that's deployed. And actually, one of the things we found on TrainSim Classic, where we tried to do this a couple of times, it makes it infinitely more likely to go wrong, bluntly, somewhere along the way. So that's one of the reasons it was tried. It was tried with the 378 on TrainSim Classic in a couple of occasions, and it just didn't work very well. With downloads not working and things not working correctly. So we kind of steered away from it because it's a really bad experience if your route just doesn't work because it's missing some content. So and you can't then have the same files in 2 different packages because then you've got 2 packages trying to update one set of files. So that doesn't work. And you can't have the last point then from a maintainability perspective is if you've got let's say we've got that class 66 in route A, and let's say we've been able to work around all of the complexities and so forth, and we now have that same class 66 in route B. But in the class 66 in route B, actually we found a couple of bugs, and maybe we need to fix those bugs, or we need to add a couple of features to make it work well in route B. So if you modify that class 66, you've now got to go and retest it all in route A. Now imagine that class 66 is in 15 routes. What happens then is you don't make changes to that class 66. It will never change because the amount of time that it will take to just test the simplest fix, it'd be a 5-minute fix with a week of testing, because you need to make sure that it's not caused a problem. And it's amazing to see how much that multiplies up. But what I've said there probably sounds ludicrous and probably over the top. Trust me, it does end up multiplying on it. And every time you do something like that with a reused asset, because we've got more and more going into the core now. So we've got the UK signaling, all the different signals are now located in the core. And sometimes some of the issues that we're seeing where you modify one thing and it breaks somewhere else is because of that core thing that was modified. And that's a really good example of where these things have to be checked in multiple places, where something has been modified for a particular. I think there's an example. It's a fix actually that's coming soon for the TrainSim Mod 3 update. It's already out on TrainSim Mod 4. Is the gantries on some German routes, which suddenly got placed weirdly for no apparent reason at all. We hadn't even modified those routes. So why did the gantry suddenly move? And it's because those gantries were in core, and someone had modified perfectly reasonably the gantry to do what they wanted where they were using it. And that has then had a knock-on effect to everywhere else it was being used, and they didn't even realize that that was the case. And so unless you then say, right, okay, this asset is used in 5 other places, this loco is used in 5 other places, if I make a change, all those places need to be retested. And like I said, what happens then is you stop making changes. And I'm not happy with that. It's like, it does mean that you get things that are different at different level, but it's better, I think, to keep the sim moving forward than to freeze it, because actually the weight of change with each time you try and do something becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, and eventually you just say it's not worth making a 5-minute change if it's going to take us a week to test that 5-minute change. I'd rather spend that week testing some of the other stuff in there, so leave that thing out of the build. and that's kind of where you end up. So that's the situation. It's not a great situation. I don't like it at all. But it's kind of like the best of a bad situation. And it is something we are trying to think. We've got the thinking caps on, trying to work out how do we get it to where we have one Class 66, or of a particular variety of Class 66, like say Divishenko or AWS. You have one of them. And then we have it to where it's more dynamic. So we're thinking about this. We don't know if there's a really good solution, but it is something that we've got to think in caps on. So to see what we can do. So, but that's kind of why it's like that. It makes it to where we can keep things moving more swiftly without getting bogged down with hundreds of hours of additional testing that actually are not giving you significant value.
Thank you for the explanation, Matt. And for those of you that kind of asked, well, why are there three 111s on Rosenheim? I'm pretty sure that's a bug, so that's something
That's
that
a
we
bug.
raised.
Yeah, that's a bug.
So
And we will get that fixed. That's just what the heck's going on. Then what we think is it's either formations creeping in, which would be a tick box run somewhere. Everything is usually wrong by the tick box. There's set wrong somewhere, or it's something down to variations or something like that. So either they'll get named so that you know why they're there, or they'll get removed because they shouldn't be there. So we'll get that resolved one way or the other.
Yeah, and while we answer a few more questions in the chat, we are kind of coming to the point where we're probably going to almost call it an evening, but there are a few more things to get to. Someone did ask, they wanted to put the Semmeringbahn Walkaround back on. So again, the volume won't be too loud because I still want to be able to talk, but there you go, it's on in the background, so to kind of help showcase that. But you can also view it from if you're watching on YouTube, which I believe you are because you commented on the YouTube chat. You can find a link to this in the description if you want to hear the sounds. So there was a question. So not David Trains. Have you seen my question about the 170 and the 158? I'm actually not too sure about the layering for Edinburgh, Glasgow. Unless, Matt, you know off the top of your head, that can be something I can confirm for you tomorrow.
I'm not aware of any changes happening to Edinburgh, Glasgow, but I was actually talking to Rivet today, and they're starting to think about what that might be, but that wouldn't be for release. And at the moment, it is very much what could be done type phase rather than anything actually into a promised plan or anything like that. So no, don't expect anything, but do know that Rivet are thinking.
Yep, and just on that note as well, again, there are a lot of questions here in the chat, and we kind of a lot of the time when it's an issue that hasn't been resolved from one month to the next, it makes sense to give us a question, throw us has this been fixed just yet, or is this resolved? Sometimes that might mean that we're still looking into it, but generally, if you have a question that hasn't been asked from us before, make sure to put it on the Q&A thread, the roadmap Q&A thread. Part of my job tomorrow on a Wednesday, following the roadmap streams that we do, is to go through the whole thread and answer as many questions as I can with a written update, and then I kind of close off the thread. So what I'll do is I'll paste this in the chat now. That's our March roadmap Q&A thread. Any questions that either us or the lovely mods in chat haven't had a chance to answer or weren't aware of what the answer was, put it in that thread. I'll kind of do some investigation and give you what I can. Doesn't always mean there'll be a perfect answer for everything, and it certainly doesn't mean that will X be coming and I'll give you an answer, but put it in there and I'll give you an update. I know, for example, when there was a question raised on class 801 Azuma issues, there's a small list that was kind of raised last month about various issues for the Azuma on East Coast Main Line. I don't believe we've had a chance since then. It wasn't in the February update, so I'm guessing those issues are still outstanding, but I might be able to give you a bit of an update from where we're at from a development point of view, whether we've got a kind of test fix in place or whether we're still looking into it. So throw some questions on that thread if you haven't had them answered, but we'll kind of be looking to wrap up, but I'll take a few more questions from the chat. Again, don't feel like you have to jump at us because, again, it's easy to throw a question for us on the thread afterwards, and we'll get to you when we have more time tomorrow as well.
So Captain Price has been talking about the 1116 for looking a lot like the BR182, and it's because fundamentally both locomotives are the Siemens ES64U2 locomotive, so they are the same locomotive, just BB's version versus Deutsche Bahn's version. And I seem to recall Deutsche Bahn got them from BB, if I remember rightly. The difference is between them. If you look at the DB182, BR182 that came with Rapid Transit, and you look at the one in the Semmeringbahn, you'll notice it's got a rebuilt cab. It's got the whole new cab inside there. He's saying, one of you also asked, is it a completely rebuilt model? No, it isn't a completely rebuilt model because there's no point. but it has been overhauled, and obviously the interior has been redone. So there's an extensive amount of work been done on the ES64U2.
Got a question here about, can caching be done by sitting in a coach? Of course, as long as you're loading
Yes.
the route, as long as you're like as long as the engine's having time to actually render in the entire distance of the scenery, once you've cached that and kind of banked it, then it should be saved. You should be kind of safe from
Yeah,
stuttering
what
as
I
well.
do for the streams is I'll start up a on foot mode at one of the end stations. I'll get on the train, sit on the seat, and then use the 3 key to set the thing outside so you can see as much as possible on the screen. And then just I'll walk away and just leave it, particularly if it's one of the end-to-end routes where it just run up and down for 3 or 4 hours. Or if it just runs one way up, that's enough. So as long as you've got stuff on the screen, then it'll have gone through the process to generate the cache.
Brilliant. A bit of a fun one here, but a quick one maybe for you, Matt, is do you have a personal favorite era and train? Possibly, is this a good chance to possibly allude a little bit to a personal project of yours that you're working on?
So there's a number of things that I like. See, the thing, a lot of people ask me about favorite trains, favorite periods, and the thing is, I just like trains generally. It's all good. However, Clinchfield has been one of my personal favorite routes because I like older era trains because they feel a little bit less. You're a little bit, sorry, a bit more hands-on. Whereas modern trains, it almost feels like you're flying an autopilot sometimes. Which is super efficient, super appropriate for modern railways. But actually, I feel like I want to get down there and get the spanner out and drive the train properly. Clinchfield really hit the nail on the head for me because I like freight, I like shunting, I like old routes. Who doesn't like an F7? So I've been actually doing one of these Todd 4 updates on Clinchfield. And I mean, I've not made very much progress, to be honest. I've made a start, and I can already see a massive improvement. He says, blowing his own trumpet, for Dant in the south area, because I've relit a lot of Dant Yard and the areas around it. And I've also started having a look at with the beta team and some of the North American players we've got on the beta team about what's the right way to approach headlights for something like an F7, because the F7's headlights are kind of short distance and they flay out quite a lot in the game, but actually in reality they really narrow focus and they go for a long way, several, hundreds of meters in the distance. So it's really, really different. So I've been playing with the headlights to sort of look at that side of things. So that's kind of, I'm really interested in that side of things, and yeah, that's kind of me. I'm really down to that.
And I think we're probably going to be calling it there. Again, doesn't mean we don't appreciate all the questions coming in and for all of you watching tonight. It's been brilliant having you on, but it does mean that we have evenings that we have to close out. So if there's a question that you really want a burning response from us on the development teams as well, get to that thread. I will link it one more time. The March roadmap Q&A thread on our forums. Just drop a response in there. Just write your question out. When it comes to tomorrow morning, I'll give it a look and then I'll go about finding as many answers as I can to that. I do want to say for the people who have mod privileges in the chat, whether those are dedicated chat moderators, I know Train Simulator Driver, I've seen you in there quite a lot. Thank you so much. I mean, you do a brilliant job at helping share questions and helping share answers for the community watching live. Alex wants his cup of tea. I definitely do. I'm out of water, so it's definitely tea o'clock. But thank you very much. I mean, this was the Train Sim World roadmap for March 2024. I know it's been a bit of a wordy one. I know. I think there's a
He's
lot
having
of
a dig at me, isn't he?
no, well, I mean, I started the stream off, so. But I think when you look back at February, we had a really high in February with the Direct, and we announced so many different projects, like whether they were coming out in the next month or coming out in the next like 4 or 5 months down the line. I think coming back into March, it's like, well, we're back to the monthly updates, but we're trying to share as much as we can. And we hope you appreciated the fact that Matt, again, I do appreciate the fact that you were able to share more of that developer insight and talk more about why things are happening. We were able to share a bit of a behind the scenes of the suspensions update as well. If you've seen that video, it's linked in the description, but if you've seen it,
Were we going to show it on the stream, that video?
Did we not?
No, we didn't. I was wondering. Should we have a quick look at that video before we go? There you
There
go.
we
So
go.
this is the Class 66 with the new suspension system. And actually, one of the reasons I wanted people to see it is to get feedback. What do you think about it? Is that, I mean, I think it looks super cool, but one of the debates going on in the beta forum, is it too much? Actually, it's particularly when you see it from the outside. or is it actually fine for it to be exaggerated a little bit because it's it's a bit more dramatic? You can feel it in the game. If you made it more super realistic, would it actually be barely noticeable? So I think it looks superb the way it is in there. And we've got it into a couple of other trains as well, so we're going to hopefully show you some more progress at another point. So this is you can see it from the outside now. You can see each of the axles as it rocks. And actually, what this is demonstrating is that it's not one layer of suspension. This is two layers of suspension, because you've got, if I remember rightly, coil suspension for the axles on the bogie, and then air suspension, I think, from the bogie up to the body. I can't remember exactly what it is, but there's two layers of suspension, and it's implemented as all independent. Every axle's independent. The bogie is independent on the body, and we're able to choose where the air is, where the coil is. The air suspension is linked into the air system in the train even as well. So it's quite a deep level of simulation that's going on there. But to me, just as I was driving over that, it's particularly this bit here where it's actually, you've got the front rocking and the back rocking, and you get a slightly more rough rock as it's going over there. And it's just like, to me, it just felt, oh, I like this a lot. It's just going to feel so good coming out of a busy throat, and like a station, a main station, and you're rocking over a load of points before you get onto the main line. It's going to be really nice. So give us your feedback on the forums and just let us know what you think, and we'll roll that into the discussions we're having on the beta team about tuning it, because this is a good time to tune the suspension before we start pushing it out to a wider range of stock. So the 66 is one particular class of suspension implementation. Something like the 4024 is a different type of implementation. They're all different. There's about 8 or 9 different things that we've implemented that have got different setups, different combinations of setups. So we want to try and tune them, get them right, and then we'll be able to start pushing it out to more trains, and we can then tell you, how that's going to work. But I want to get this core set right, because it's much harder to change once we start pushing it out to everything, because you've got to change all of those different things. So yeah, let us know on the forums what you think.
And I
Sorry,
can't
Alex,
believe
I'm delaying your tea.
I can't believe I was going to skip over that. That's a really good video. If you want to watch it again, you want to listen to the sounds as well, it's in the description. So go watch that video. If you're not watching on YouTube at the moment, jump over to Trains and Mod YouTube. It is currently unlisted. It's just because we don't want to fill up our videos page, but you can find it in the roadmap article, and you can find it in the description of this video. So much for all that apparent time spent on preparation. There it goes. But I do appreciate the compliment. But I want to say that actually working at Dovetail and working with the teams, there is so much love put into all of our releases from every department, and I really mean that. Like from whether you're on the marketing, the community side, which I'm on, or kind of more in the depths of development with Matt, there's love put in from all around. So yeah, it's
a lot
really,
of passion from the team. Totally,
yes.
it's train enthusiast or not, the team really passionate about what they do, and making trying to do the best job they can for everybody. So hopefully that shows.
Yeah. So anyway, any remaining questions, you know where to put them by now. March roadmap thread pinned in the forums, so put them there. I'll be there tomorrow morning, answering those I can. Thank you for joining us tonight. That'll do it for March. Join us next month. We'll have another monthly roadmap. That's it's a keys in the name, really. And also keep an eye on our announcements. We've got a couple releases coming up, so we look forward to sharing more on those when we can. And obviously, with a new release means it's going to be a new preview, so you'll be seeing Matt and the assorted community team joining you to preview the new routes that we have coming out. But it's been a long night. We hope you have enjoyed the development insights, the questions, and generally the lovely waffle that we serve each time we go live. So thank you. Thank you all, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Cheers, everyone.